Hey guys, welcome to Treadmill Review Guru. Today we are going to compare two of the top rowers on the market. As you can see, I have the elegant Ergatta and the very chic Hydrow. They are both subscription content based and provide a very smooth rowing experience. However, there are some significant differences. So let's dive in and take a close look at the benefits and differences between each of these rowers. So first off, let's compare the overall footprint and dimensions of both rowers. So they are both full-length rowers with their 86 inches long, and both can be stored vertically. However, they do not fold up, so that is something to be aware of. The Ergatta is a little bit easier to store vertically because it's lighter. Unweighted, it's about 76 pounds, and full of water, it's 105 pounds. And you do not require any special equipment to invert it. And we'll show you how that works in a minute. However, the Hydrow is 170-ish pounds. It's considerably heavier. And so they recommend, if you plan to store it vertically, to get an anchor kit to secure it to the wall. But they both have the same length at 86 inches. The other dimensions on the Hydrow are a little bigger. So it is 25 inches wide, whereas the Ergatta is only 23 inches wide. Similarly, as you can see, the Hydrow is 47 inches high and the Ergatta is about 40 inches high. Obviously, the rail on the Ergatta sits a little lower, and I'll show you the dimensions on that in just a second. You can see the Hydrow has a slightly larger touchscreen, so you do have more of a visual field here when you're rowing, which is nice. The rail sits considerably higher on the Hydrow, so that is one thing that's really nice, especially if you have a limited mobility. You don't have to sink as low to sit down on the Hydrow. So the rail itself is 14 inches high, and it's 17 inches high to the top of the seat. So you do have some pretty good height there, which makes it a little easier to get on and off. Also, your inseam length from roughly the center of the footboard to the front of the seat is about 41 inches. So I think online they say 40 inches, but I actually measured it at 41. So you really do have considerable inseam length, and I feel like this would be a great rower for people of pretty much any size. Because it is elevated slightly, the weight capacity on this is 375 pounds. So once again, that should support most people. The seat here, as you can see, you've got rollers that are tucked underneath that rail. So the seat is very secure on there, which is one thing I really like. It's 12 inches wide and about 10 inches deep. So you do have a good span, and you can see it's got nice contouring in there for your tailbone, which is nice when you lean back. And I find the seat on the Hydrow to be more comfortable than the seat on the Concept 2. It's a similar size, but it's got a little bit more padding, which I like. I feel like I can row for longer without getting uncomfortable. A few other things to be aware of. The handle on the Hydrow is perfectly round, so it doesn't have any ergonomic dimensions to it. It's perfectly round, and it's about 18 inches wide. So you've got quite a good span on that handle, and I feel like it would support most size hands really pretty well. The other thing that I do like about the Hydrow is the width of the pedals. So it's not something you think about all that often, but because you're strapped in when you're rowing, your feet are kind of locked into a specific position directly in front of you. From the outside perimeter of each pedal, it's about 15 inches, and you have about 5 inches of span in between each pedal. So I feel like it keeps your hips in alignment, and especially for larger users, men, people that have naturally a wider hip girth, this is going to be very comfortable. It's not going to pull your feet in together. So that's something I like. Right here, the catch is right in line with the seat height. So it's about 17 inches, which once again, I just find that to be a very good dimension. So the Ergatta sits a little bit lower to the floor, as you can see, obviously. It has a dual track system, which provides a lot of structural security and integrity. It also, because it sits so low, it has a high weight capacity. So this rower will support up to 500 pounds, which means it is a good option for larger users. However, there's a few dimensions just to be aware of. So you do have a really good inseam length. I measured from the front of the seat to the middle of that foot pedal. It's actually 43 inches, so quite a lot of inseam length. The top of the rail is about 6 inches from the floor, so it's pretty low, but the top of the seat is 12 inches from the floor. So, you know, it's compatible with other rowers. You do have to sit just slightly lower than you would on the Hydrow, but it's not terrible. I like all 4 wheels on the Ergatta. I find that the Ergatta seat moves with you, it doesn't move for you. And when you're rowing, if the seat is a little too slick or if you're fighting it, both of those things can impact the feel while you're rowing. So this seat has very good fluid movement, but it's not too loose either. And as I mentioned, the top of the seat is 12 inches from the floor. So the dual track system I like in a lot of ways because like I said, it adds a lot of structural integrity. But there's a few things on it that are a little narrow. So as I mentioned on the Hydrow, you have quite a bit of span between those 2 pedals. On the Ergatta, you only have about 10 to 12 inches of span right here from side to side. And on the Hydrow, you have 15. Similarly, you only have 2 inches of span between those footboards, whereas on the Hydrow, you have 5. So I feel like for a larger user, this is gonna pull your feet in a little bit. It's gonna be a little narrow, and it kind of compresses you here at the catch when you come back down through that drive and recovery. This feels congested, and it may feel even more so for a larger user, someone with tall, long legs or whatever. So just be aware of your width parameters there on the footboard. These footboards are adjustable, so you can adjust them for any size shoe, and that should be fine. Similarly, the handle is a little narrower as well. So this handle is only 15 inches from side to side, whereas the Hydrow is 18 inches. So once again, it's gonna pull you in just a touch. And this handle has a little bit of ergonomic design to it. So it is kind of elongated, which gives you a nice hold there. I actually prefer the Hydrow. I prefer a nice round handle, maybe just because I'm used to it. This, I found that it only gave me the option of holding the handle in one specific position. So just something else to be aware of. This, as you can see, is a water resistance rower, and that is one of the biggest differences between these 2 machines. You've got water resistance on the Ergatta and magnetic resistance on the Hydrow. So we're gonna jump into that in just 1 second. One other thing that I did wanna show you on the Ergatta right here, I love the strap system because straps are so much quieter than a chain. But as you can see, this strap is already starting to fray just from the use that we've put on it, testing it. Part of that has to do with the roller mechanism that feeds down into the rower. It kind of has edges that can grab the side of that strap. So, and it's a little narrower than the Hydrow or than I've seen on other ones. So that's one thing that kind of gives me pause on it, but it does feel very fluid as you're rowing. So let's dive in and take a closer look at the differences between the resistance systems. So let's start off with the Ergatta, and I'm just gonna demonstrate how the water tank sounds as you row. So rowing purists tend to love the water resistance because it is very much like rowing outside. And the one thing that I love about the Ergatta is you hear the water. So on the Hydrow, we'll talk about that in a second, you see the water. On the Ergatta, you hear it. And the water tank is really pretty subtle. If I really pull hard, I can churn that water harder. But either way, it doesn't create a lot of noise, and the noise is very subtle, as I mentioned. And for someone my size, I find the dimensions to be just fine. I'm very comfortable here. Other people may find it to be a little bit constricting, but I'm 5'5" and it works for me. The other thing I do like is the distance of the screen from the rower. So unlike other machines where you're kind of in a set position directly in front of your touchscreen, when you're rowing, you're moving forward and back. And so it matters a little more if that screen is too large or if it's in your face, you're gonna feel it as you come in through that recovery. So I do find the screen to be appropriately sized and appropriately positioned directly in front of the person rowing. The other thing that you'll notice, and this is one thing that I really like about Ergatta, is they have gamified their programming. So unlike Hydrow, that we'll get into in a second, there's no actual rowing content. You're not seeing videos, you're not seeing people, there's nothing that takes you outdoors. It's all gamified digital content. I actually love it. It's very engaging, it keeps you, there's lots of different options. It keeps you focused. So if you're the type of person who, like me, maybe has a shorter attention span, kind of likes a little bit more of an immediate, integrated feeling, that's what you're gonna get from the Ergatta, simply because of the way the programming has been designed. And it does keep track of your metrics for you as you row. One thing to be aware of on a water rower is you can't adjust your drag factor, you can't adjust the resistance, there's no preset resistance levels, there's no damper. Once you fill your tank, that determines the amount of resistance that you're gonna generate. So that is one limitation on a water rower, but if you fill that tank sufficiently, it provides plenty of resistance. So the Hydrow is just a little bit of a different rowing experience. I feel like you get a good quality rowing experience on either one, but they're significantly different in both the feel while you're rowing and the subscription content. So I just wanted to show you a few things on the Hydrow. As you can see, you do have a slightly larger touchscreen, and I really don't feel like the Ergatta touchscreen is too small in any way. So I don't want to give you that thought, but it is nice to have just a little more depth to your visual field because you're watching videos on this one as opposed to just games. So it is nice to have that expansive display to provide that nice videography. The other thing that I do love is all the various content and workouts that they have on the Hydrow. You are being led by a professional rower, and it's not someone on a rowing machine, it's someone out on the water. So as I mentioned earlier, on the Ergatta, you hear the water as you row, and on the Hydrow, you see it. So you really do feel like you're out there. And I personally really like this rowing content as far as feedback, professional instruction, things like that. So the other thing with the Hydrow is you can adjust your resistance. So right here, if I go to sound and drag settings, sound profile is just whether or not I want to hear the music and the trainer. But then down here, I can adjust the drag. And drag is basically your resistance. It's how much drag would be on the boat based on being in the water. So you can adjust that up or down. So I usually like to keep mine right around 100. That's a good for me. And then I can start to row. And so you have that option of adjusting your drag at any time, which makes it really nice when you're rowing because you can kind of tailor it based on your needs. So I'm gonna row for you just for a second. As I mentioned, this is a magnetic rower. So you can hear there's just a different quality and sound to the rower. To me, it sounds a little bit like a jet engine starting up, not because it's loud, just because you can hear it rev down and you can hear it rev up. I feel like the drive is very smooth. And as I pull on that handle, it's not loopy on the way back. Sometimes with magnetic rowers, there's no resistance on the way back. And so you don't get that really fluid feel. But I feel like the Hydrow provides you a very smooth, fluid feel throughout the rowing drive. So as you can see, both the Hydrow and the Ergatta will provide you a very nice fluid rowing experience. The biggest difference comes down to what kind of frame you want, what kind of resistance you want, and what kind of subscription content you want, because you can't really go wrong with either one. I really like the very elegant, rustic look of the Ergatta. The wood is just kind of eye-catching, and it looks like furniture in your room. It doesn't look like something that you dragged in from the garage. So you can store it in a common place. You can easily tip it up to store it, and that's not a problem. And the movement of the water through the tank as you are rowing really just provides you a nice fluid feel. I feel like the rowing stroke is very even. And you can increase or decrease your resistance based on how much water you add to that tank. So you do have a little bit of control over resistance, but what you can't do is control it in the moment. So that's just something to be aware of. And then even though the programming would seem simplistic, I actually love the gamified content. For me, and as I mentioned, my attention span, I really like that I have to stay on track literally with every stroke. I have to pay attention to how hard I'm working and where I am. Because the way the interactive games kind of keep you engaged. So I do like that. I'm a little concerned that it could be slightly constricted for larger users with that narrow footboard, and it is lower to the ground, so just a few things to be aware of on that. The Hydrow provides really, really nice video content. So you don't have the same gamified interaction, but you have instruction from professional rowers out there on the water. You can see the water, the videography is nice, you get multiple angles, and as you can see, there is just a whole database. They have over 3,000 workouts so far, and they're always adding more. So I feel like if you like the experience of a larger touchscreen, seeing the water, hearing the instructor, this is a little bit just more, not professional, but just there's more to it as far as content. And I do like that it sits a little higher off the floor. I find, even for me, and I'm not a large person, but getting on and off the Hydrow is just a little easier. It is a little harder to invert and store vertically, so that's one thing to be aware of. If you'd like more in-depth analysis of each of these rowers with up-close pictures and things like that, make sure and check out our written reviews at treadmillreviewguru.com. Of course, there's links below if you would like to see the current prices on either one of these rowers. And as always, we would like to know what you think and what you have to say. So do you already own one? Let us know what your experience is. We would love to hear from you. So as always, we are glad to have you with our channel. If you liked our video, make sure to subscribe and give us a thumbs up. My name's Kristen with Treadmill Review Guru, and we'll see you again soon.